Good evening, all. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Natasha Guerra, and I am an alumni member of the Alumni Association Committee. The topic of this evening's webinar, I'm delighted to introduce to you and be joined by Bristol alumnus Tim Leach, also known as the Mindful Baker.
Hi guys.
Welcome, Tim.
Hello, everyone.
So Tim teaches bread making workshops through which he explains the principles of mindfulness. And arguably during the pandemic, the concept and practice of mindfulness has become more relevant and vital than ever. This evening, Tim's going to tell us more about his journey since he left Bristol and also some tips for aspiring entrepreneurs. He's going to also give us a quick demo and share a recipe for healthy and nutritious, easy to make cookies, which he will be integrating with his mindful practice this evening. So Tim, you graduated Bristol Uni with a law degree in 2006. Tell us a bit more about your journey since then that's led you to where you are today.
So when I left Bristol, I decided I'd have one final hurrah before I became a lawyer. And I did a ski season out in Maribel in France. And I went out so it was in end of 2006, I went out. I was doing the season for about 3 months, and in beginning of 2007, I had a horrific accident. I skied off a cliff and I landed on my head. I broke my back, I broke my neck, and I was in a coma for 3 weeks. And that completely changed and altered my sort of journey from there on. The doctor said when I was sort of basically coming out of the coma and released out of hospital, they said, "We advise you not to work for 2 years because your brain was so injured." And from there, I decided to not go into law as a result of that. I set up my own company, which was a shirt company. So I sort of created or manufactured or had shirts manufactured, made in India. And that was relatively successful for a first business. But it didn't really go as well as I wanted it to go. And so I sort of got other work along the way, but it was a good way for me to sort of get back into civilization, so to speak, following the accident. It was just a slow journey for me. And I was lucky that my parents supported me on that journey, trying to just get my head back on the straight and narrow, so to speak.
So somehow along the way you found mindfulness and baking. How did that come about?
So I learned about mindfulness, or I learned about meditation. I got into, so the first 2 years, I sort of Googled it, looked at it. I did a course on something called transcendental meditation, which it's very interesting. I did that for 2 more years. And then I thought I'd quite like to learn more about meditations and what have you, because, there's no specific one meditation works for everyone. So I thought, I looked around and I read about mindfulness, and I had a go at mindfulness. And it really sort of struck me that mindfulness is all about living, obviously, in the moment, but just taking care of absolutely everything which you do, just noticing and observing everything that you do on a day-to-day basis, and just noticing how that can really have an impact on your life, which was incredible. I did a mindfulness course, mindfulness teacher training course. So I was taught how to do teacher training, how to train people in mindfulness. And everything was going well. And then... And
what really brought the idea of the actual mindful baker, as you've got your apron on out?
Yeah, well, that was the bit I was about to get to. So bear in mind, I'd done all these courses and everything, and I was sort of setting up courses to teach people about 8-week mindfulness courses. I wasn't really having a great deal of success because I think it's very dry. Everyone thinks mindfulness meditation is a dry subject. So I was just like, I'm not very good at trying to sell something which I agree it's quite a dry thing if you don't look at it from a certain aspect. Anyway, Christmas came 2 years ago, and my cousin's husband came along, and he brought us, as a present, instead of bringing wine to a party we were having, he brought 2 loaves of sourdough. And I was just like, thank you very much. It's a lovely present. And genuinely, it was a lovely present. Instead of just getting a bottle of cheap wine, we got a lovely 2 lovely loaves of sourdough. And I said to him, that's a lovely gift. Thank you so much. You'll have to teach me how to do it. And I didn't really want to be taught how to do it. I just thought that's the best thing to say. But he really took me up on it. And about a week later, he said, right, would you like to do the course? Would you like me to teach you how to do sourdough? And I was like, yeah, let's do it next week. And he said, I can't do it next week. I've got a business trip. So we'll have to do it tomorrow. I was like, okay, come along, let's do it tomorrow. I thought, okay, let's just do it. It could be quite interesting. And it was just, he came along, he taught me how to do everything. And I picked it up straight away. I was just like, this is incredible. It's really good fun. I enjoyed it, made my bread. He gave me the starter, which you need to start it with sourdough. It's like the yeast. Anyway, I will be talking about that later. And I just got into it and I started making sourdough and I made a lot. And then over the sort of the weeks and months of making it, I suddenly started to see a distinction and a correlation between leading a mindful life and baking a loaf of sourdough. Because baking a loaf of sourdough takes 36 hours. And obviously trying to sort of trying to make sure your life is led through mindfulness isn't a click and it's done thing. It takes time. And so with the bread, I learned how to, or I created this course where I teach people how to make sourdough at the same time as explaining how mindfulness correlates very well with it. So I set up a course which has been so successful, well, until lockdown when no one's been able to come. But I've done a few online courses doing the same thing. It's not quite the same, but anyway, it's been really successful and people have really enjoyed learning about mindfulness and learning about the baking at the same time. So it's been a really, really successful little venture which I've created. And it's just great to be able to see people really appreciating and experiencing so there's two things, obviously the sourdough and the mindfulness, which are they're coming out to be quite big things in the current world, certainly sort of post-pandemic. I think in the pandemic, because I was teaching people how to make sourdough in the pandemic, either online or just, actually, yeah, it was all online. And so many people enjoy it and love it. People who I had no idea would suddenly decide to become bakers have taken it up. And, I get calls and messages most days now saying, how do I do this? Or pictures from, what do you think of this? My mother especially, she's an amazing cook. So I'm into cooking because of her, but she was never really into baking bread. And she now, most days, will send me a picture of bread that she's created, which is lovely.
And what's kind of a typical day as a mindful baker look like?
So as a mindful baker,
well, as the mindful baker, which you are.
I am the mindful baker.
Well, what does your typical day look like, I guess, is what I was asking.
So when it comes to days when I'm teaching, the night before, I have to feed the starter. And that's, so do you know what a starter is?
No.
So starter is fermented flour. And instead of using yeast, you use this fermented flour. And it takes a week for this flour just to sort of form into a living creature, so to speak. So I did a YouTube course teaching people how to make starter, and I said it's your little baby. You have to name it at the end of the course. So I made one at the obviously beginning of lockdown, and I called my starter. She's a little Cora. Which is very sweet. Anyway, so that's it. So what you have to do, you have to feed the starter the night before. So at 9-10 o'clock, you put starter and you mix it up with flour, mix it up with water, and you leave it overnight covered. Next morning, it will be 2-3 times the size of how you left it. So that's then a living starter. You then put 40 grams of that living starter into a bowl, and then into a little jar, and then you leave that for another 4 hours after putting more flour in, and you create something called a leaven. And then with that leaven, after 4 hours, you then add it to another big bowl with a lot more flour, and the leaven, obviously, and a lot of water. And then you mix it all up. And this is where the mindfulness part of my teaching comes in. So a lot of people who come to me, because I also do life coaching as well. And a lot of people who come to me, their lives aren't perfect, like everyone's lives seem to be on Facebook. Their lives, you know, like everyone's lives, aren't perfect. You know, they're having troubles. They're having really sort of real issues with whatever is troubling them at the time. And so I explained to them how when you mix up the flour and the water and the yeast, not the yeast, the starter, not yeast, yeast starter, and the starter, and then it's just a mess. You created this floury, watery mess. And that's what a lot of people's lives are like. You know, they feel that their lives are just a mess. And then what you then do, of course, you then leave, once you've mixed it up, you just leave it for an hour. And then within that hour, I then teach people about mindfulness. But while that hour is happening, the dough is being made, and it's just creating this beautiful, beautiful bit of dough. And I explain that very similar to the dough, mindfulness is a similar thing. So your life, you feel like it's a mess. So it's like all of this dough and flour all mixed up and looking all messy. You just got to leave it and let it be. Don't try to change it. Like a lot of people, like I said, you know, if you have a problem, you try to either drink it away, or you just try to take your mind off by doing other things. And you just try to just create all this loud noise, just trying to block it out. And so many people do that, and it has absolutely no effect, and it actually feeds whatever the problem is. But whereas if you just let it be and let it sit for in this case, for an hour, but obviously for the mindfulness, it's a bit longer, but it's just me showing the two similarities. If you let it sit for a while, things slowly sort out for themselves. You know, you're not pushing things happening. You're just allowing things just to take note of themselves. And then obviously with the dough, which you created, you leave that for an hour. So once, when you put it in, it was all messy and sticky. After an hour, you literally put it in the bowl and you can just lift it up, and then it's just created this beautiful stringy bit of dough. Do that. And then you put salt in it, then wait another half an hour, and then there's lots more sort of techniques you do. But it's, I suppose it's the initial starting point that it's just about letting things be rather than trying to push things and make things more complicated than they need to be. You know, instead of trying to feed the issues which you're experiencing.
What's been your biggest learning so far building this business?
My biggest learning building the business, I would say similar to the way I just explained, how I'm not trying to make things happen by pushing things. It's just being a lot more restrained and just allowing things just to come naturally, and just not trying to push. And I've done that with so many different aspects of the business. And if people, and maybe it's because of a time, because people want to know so much about mindfulness. People want to know about sourdough as well. And you know, I've just put like little sort of tentacles out, and people have come to me rather than me just trying to go to. Because when I set up my shirt business, you know, I spent lots of money and I tried to do so many things, just trying to market it. And I was just like really aggressive with it and pushing it out. Whereas with the Mindful Baker, I'm not aggressive with it. I'm just allowing people to come. If they want to come, they want to appreciate it, and they want to enjoy it, then that's incredible. And I'm so happy when people do, because that's just exactly what people need to come to me for. And they need to come with the right mindset as well.
Excellent. So I'm pretty excited to see this live demo. Apparently you're going to show us a kind of healthy, nutritious recipe for cookies this evening.
Yes. Yeah. So basically what I'm going to do, I know obviously I'm the Mindful Baker and obviously the baking the bread thing, but as that takes 36 hours, it's not going to be possible to do that in the short time we have. So what I'm doing something called a 3-ingredient cookie, and it genuinely is easy, tasty, and good for you. So that's 3 things which you can't go wrong with. So what you have, you need 2 bananas. I mean, obviously double it or halve it if you're making less, but this makes roughly about 12 cookies. You need 2 bananas, you need 128 grams of gluten-free. I'm using gluten-free because my fiance is a celiac, so she needs gluten-free. So you can make this gluten-free as well. Anyway, gluten-free oats. So 128 grams of gluten-free oats and 28 grams of raisins. Simple enough. Now what you do, you need to make sure that the bananas you use are ripe bananas. You know, you don't want to use the green ones because that just won't work. So anyway, peel your bananas and then put them in your mixing bowl. And then just mush it. Just mushing it slowly. As fast as you like. There's no real time limit in this one, but it will basically go into a paste. I mean, I don't really need to explain how to mash with a fork. It's quite simple. This whole thing is very simple and easy. So you'll be all right with that. And then put in no particular order. You can put in the oats in first, you can put the raisins in. I'm going to put the oats in first. You could put the raisins in first. It's up to you. Then I'm going to put the raisins in. Okay? And then mix it all up. And another thing about these cookies is children not only love them because they just taste so unhealthy, even though they're not, but there's no added sugar at all in them. So this is great for children. It's just the perfect way to fool them into something healthy, because you know kids love their McDonald's and unhealthy stuff. This is not it. Okay, so once it's all mixed up, you need to. So I said you average. It makes about 12 cookies. So you just get a little bit, and then you need to obviously. I forgot to say a baking tray, and then put some parchment paper on baking tray, and then there. Can we see? Yeah. And then, yeah, so like I said, so we're making 12. So I'm now going to be putting 12 of these on here. Now, before you start this, which I did earlier, I forgot to mention it, but put your oven on to 180. I don't know if that's centigrade or Fahrenheit, but everything has about 180, doesn't it?
Centigrade, I think.
I'm not sure what its equivalent is. No, 100, but you can work it out. 180. And then you put these in the oven at 180 for 20 minutes. And then after 20 minutes, you take them out, and then that's literally it. That is it. So you've made these amazing, delicious cookies in the space of 25 minutes. They only take 5 minutes to make. And your kids, your other half will just be like, this is amazing. And that's how we do it. So I'm just going to finish with these. So, yeah.
We also have a load of Q&A from the audience, some questions that they've submitted. Lucy asks, how do I bring more mindfulness into my everyday activities?
Right, so the point of mindfulness, as I'm sure you know, is the whole sort of living in the present moment and everything. But to live in the present moment and to bring mindfulness into your everyday activities, you have to observe and notice everything that is going on around you. And because I have a YouTube channel, incidentally called The Mindful Baker. So if anyone wants to see what I get up to as a mindful baker, go to my YouTube channel. But on that channel, I talk about, obviously, ways to become more mindful and this, that, and the other. And I did a video the other day teaching people how to change their routine in the morning in a more mindful way. And by doing that, it's just about noticing everything you do, but in a slightly different way. And you can change it slightly so you notice it more. So for example, when you have a shower, put it on cold, just like have a cold shower, and straight away you notice everything which is happening to you. You notice the fact that you've got this really, although it's not painful, but this cold water going all over you, like, ah, what's that? And then and then you can let it warm up, and then you can wash yourself, because you can't really wash yourself with cold water. I mean, I have a cold shower every day, but I always make it warm at the end, because
Wow.
because you can't lather in cold water. You have to do it warm. Anyway, so once you've washed and everything, put it back onto cold, just so you get another hit of cold water. I mean, because it's so good for you. So in this video, I talk about how good for you having a cold shower is, and it really genuinely is good for you. And then once you get out of the shower, dry yourself, and then brush your teeth. And brush your teeth. So you normally, whatever you're left hand or right handed, choose the opposite hand and brush your teeth with the opposite hand. And I promise you, it's not easy, but you will observe and notice absolutely your whole consciousness, your whole mind will be completely engrossed in what you're doing. And that is what mindfulness is about. It's about noticing everything you're doing at every single second and step of the day. And brushing your teeth with your left hand is such a great, or right hand if you're right hand, or if you're left-handed, but it's such a really good way just to notice exactly what's happening in the moment, in the present moment. Then obviously once you've done that, you can, I've nearly done all these, and I'll go and put them in the oven. You then, I don't know, put some clothes on, put like a red sock on and a green sock or something. In the video, I told people to mess around and change underwear with their other half. I thought that'd be quite funny, but that might be quite awkward if they get caught doing it, so maybe don't do that. But yeah, so just take notice of everything at every second of the way. And obviously when you go to work, obviously you don't go to work at the moment, but some people do, but traveling to work, you can, instead of walking, cycle, instead of cycling, get a bus. I mean, so many different ways of doing it. Or if you get a train, or if you're on public transport, you can meditate along the way. But meditation, the one thing I like to stress about mindfulness is it's not about meditation. Like, meditation is a very good way of helping you reach a mindful state. But meditation, you don't need to meditate. The very fact that you're observing yourself and you're sort of acknowledging everything which is around you is a very mindful way of living. And meditation helps you reach these places in a quicker way, but you don't have to meditate, because a lot of people just think that meditation is the be all and end all of it, but it's not. Right, I'm now going to go and put these in the oven. So, like I said, they need to be in for 20 minutes. I'm just going to quickly wash my hands. Taking it, there we go.
Okay, so next question. How do you handle the disappointment of a failed bake?
I'm the mindful baker. I don't fail my baking. But if things
You must have along the way.
If things don't go perfectly, like a lot of things, like proving is something which I suppose you could say it's a fail bake if it doesn't prove properly, as in it just doesn't rise at all. And that's obviously, it's disappointing, but it's just, again, noticing what's happening at this time. And one of the best things of mindfulness is bad things do happen to you. And when you're noticing these bad things which are happening to you, be it obviously something, my dough not rising properly, or something obviously much worse than that, you notice that that's a bad situation, and situations will always get better. So I know that when that happens to my dough, whatever, doesn't rise, I'll go, yeah, but the next one will. Or I look at exactly what I did, mindfully observing everything I did, and I can go, oh, right, that didn't rise because I didn't put it in the fridge at X amount of time. And then from that, you learn from your mistakes. So instead of just sort of berating yourself over something which goes wrong, you mindfully observe the situation, you work out exactly why it didn't go right, and then you can remedy it for the next time it does.
It's pretty amazing how you've moved on from your accident. What advice would you give to someone who's feeling stuck in their career?
First of all, if you, I think coming to realize that a career path you've chosen is not right for you is, I mean, it's definitely something you should be aware of. And if you've suddenly decided, I mean, it all depends. Like, obviously, I did law, and I'm no longer a lawyer because I decided to get one. Doctors told me I couldn't continue it, but I did try. After 2 years, I did try to go back into it. I was like, I'm not interested. But if I had, that would have been a completely different story if I suddenly decided I didn't want to be a lawyer after that. But I know a lot of people do like law courses, accountancy courses, and they suddenly decide they don't want to do law. They don't want to be an accountant. And if you reach that decision, and you really got to notice this within yourself, you've got to notice that it's not something which suddenly you've decided is going to be a bad choice for you because you had to woke up on the wrong side of bed. If you've been thinking, and you really have to know within yourself that that's the wrong choice, then you need to find something which you are passionate about. And passion, I think, when it comes to your line of work, because, you know, work is something you do 75% of your living life. I don't know what the stats are, but it's something, you know, it's a lot of your time. Work is something you do all the time. And if you're not happy with it, do not do it, and find something which you're passionate about. And if you can't find something you're passionate about, just find something you enjoy. And then find a way of working around that and finding something alongside that. And it's not about finding something which gives you a lot of money. And I know that for a fact. I wanted to be a lawyer at the very beginning because I was like, well, that gives great money. But now I'm doing something which I have so much pleasure in. And especially when I help people, and just seeing the look on people's faces when I obviously help them solve a sort of personal problem, or if I help them, obviously just something simple like how to make sourdough, and the look on their face, and they're so happy. And I'm just like, that makes me so much happier than if I was a lawyer and I was earning X amount per meeting or per whatever.
And how would you help young children to learn about being mindful?
When it comes to children, I think, first of all, children, certainly younger than 3, they are the people we should be taking mindfulness tuition of. Young children are so mindful, it's ridiculous, because they're not worrying about their haircut or the rubbish or a bill they've got to pay. They're not fretting about their best friend who's doing this, that, the other. They're not annoyed because they just looked on social media and someone else has done something they've done, or someone else looks better than them because they're X, Y, and Z. They're not worried that they put on a little bit of weight or that their hair's looking dodgy. They are children and they appreciate every single second of the day. They love it. You just give them a box. A cardboard box is all you need to give to a child. I mean, not that I'm the father, but I've got 2 nephews, and obviously they've grown up a little bit now, but when they were that young, you give them a cardboard box and they were just ecstatic. They played with it and played with it. I was just like, that is true mindfulness. But when they get a little bit older and obviously wanting to introduce mindfulness to children, it is quite tricky and it is quite hard because it's a very dry subject if you approach it in the wrong way. And certainly when it comes to the baking, I don't think children are really going to be that into making sourdough, which takes 36 hours, because they still want things done a little bit quicker. They're not, well, I suppose they are sort of instant fix kind of things, but they're instant fix, but also don't really care about everything because they're just so mindful living. So when it comes to so children, you have to find a way of getting them to observe themselves and appreciate themselves in such a way that they learn alongside it a way to carry on with whatever task they're doing. So it's a good way to do it would be to integrate it with something they like doing. So, I mean, children say they like, I don't know, playing in the sand or running around outside, and you can just tell them to really notice when they're playing in the sand. Just notice, tell them to lift up a hand full of sand and just notice all of the grains of sand that's going to the ground. Just go, oh, it's very nice. And then they like running around. So when you're running around, notice every time you take one step and one step and one step. And children will, you know, they might find it very strange to say that, but you just explain to them that this is like a mindful approach, just for you to start to appreciate the smallest things in life. Because as soon as you appreciate the smaller things, the bigger things just take slightly less of a worry in your head. So you start with the small things, especially as a child, and then work from there.
And so a few back onto the kind of foodie questions. Is it possible to make really good gluten-free bread?
Very good question. My fiance, who obviously, just going to say this, we're not married because of COVID. So anyway, we'll get married one day.
Great to hear.
Because I keep saying my fiance, so obviously I would be saying my wife, but she's not my wife yet. She is a celiac, so she is gluten-free. And so the very fact that I use this kitchen with flour, glutinous flour, every day isn't her favorite thing, especially as she's been working from home. So she stays upstairs in the study, and I make all the bread. But I made it my mission to make her a loaf of gluten-free sourdough. And I'm still trying to complete that mission because it's very, very hard. Even I had never had a really good, even like if you go to Whole Foods, don't even know Whole Foods, but it's a silly, expensive supermarket, which in America they call it Whole Paycheck. And yeah, if you go to Whole Foods, even their gluten-free bread isn't very good. But I'm making it my mission to create a really good loaf of sourdough, gluten-free sourdough bread.
You have to let us know when you get there with that. And which is best, dried yeast or live yeast?
Live yeast, as in starter. Like, when it comes to making bread, because obviously I do the sourdough, you can't make sourdough out of dried yeast. And obviously live yeast, I would say, is the starter. That's what live yeast is. So 100% starter. As in, it's healthy for you. But when you make sourdough, it's the way it's created and everything. It makes the bread itself, when you eat it, it's a low GI, so low glycemic index. So it gets released into your bloodstream much slower. So it doesn't go straight to all your organs and go on as fat like the white bread you buy from Tesco's. It's released very slowly. So all the energy releases slowly in your bloodstream, and you don't pile on the fat with sourdough. It's just good for you. So 100% starter. Don't do this dried. Dried yeast is only good for making cider.
And one final question to wrap up. What one piece of advice would you give your past self, especially when you were a fresh graduate?
I would say look after yourself, take care of yourself, and love yourself. You are the only person who is going to really truly know you. Even your girlfriend, your wife or husband, whatever, they will never know the real inner loving you or how you are. You're the only person who can do that. So just learn to love yourself. And that's obviously what has happened since the accident is something I've learned to do, is just love myself. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I'm no longer a lawyer, because I didn't think that was part of my plan. obviously it's great for people who are like, my fiance is a lawyer, but for me, it wouldn't work. And I find that the very fact that loving myself helped me achieve the goal which I'm trying to get to now, which I'm working on and which I'm doing all the time. So yeah, it's just about loving myself, which then helps me love everything around me and get on better.
Thank you, Tim, for a fascinating insight into not only mindful baking, but some good life lessons on loving yourself for all of us. And thanks very much to the audience for taking the time to come and listen tonight. If we didn't manage to cover your question, please feel free to email it in, and we'll endeavour to have it answered for you. There is another virtual event coming up on the Thursday, the 3rd of September at 7 p.m, which will feature Professor Matt Jones speaking about the science of sleep. So I really hope we'll see some more of you then. Thanks very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.